calendar spreadsheet will, let's make sure everything's working here. We'll see that there is a entry down here, a little bit of the way, that says new late work policy. Okay, going through the first chunk of assignments, it became clear that a lot of the same people are still trying to do a lot of the horrible work study practices and just complete minimalism and below whatever below minimalism is. And we're not going to do that again. Having people try to submit work on the last day of the quarter or the last day of the semester, I mean, it's annoying, it's pathetic, and it's like 3 times the work for me that you're here, do the work. It's not hard. So, new policy. Assignments are due on the day they are assigned. So today is the due date for the assignment that we're about to do. However, there is no point deduction as long as you get it in by that assignment's deadline. Okay? As long as you get it done by the deadline, you don't need to email me. Okay? Due date is day of. Deadline will be listed, you know, out in front a little bit. And as long as you get it done before the deadline, there's no deduction and no email needed. Now, if you miss the deadline and you still want to recover points, you must come in during lunch. You must complete that assignment from scratch to show me that you know how to do it. And you cannot do more than 1 assignment per day. Yes, it is significantly more work than just doing it on time. That's the point. Okay, does anybody have any confusion about the new policy? If you were one to do your stuff on time previously, this doesn't affect you. Okay, any questions? Happy to clear up. Anybody see any incongruities or possible stumbling blocks moving forward? Great, then we are agreed. Now, for the first 3 assignments, which are lesson 1, 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, that have been graded, I don't think it's fair for me to have thrown that policy in after the fact. So for those first 4 lessons, which 1 and 2 are the same assignment, you can email me if you haven't done them and want them reassessed, but only before the deadline. Okay, so that's still reasonable. And we'll call it on time too, as long as you email me. The reason you have to email me is because I'm not going to go through everyone's assignment to see which of those first ones have been updated or improved. So if you want a new grade for the things that have already been graded, you do need to email me. But after that, there's no reason for you to ever email me about a grade. Before the deadline, no email needed because I'll see it when I grade it. After the deadline, come in and show me the work. I mean, start from scratch and do it yourself without help, without a video. So there's no more late work emails. There's no reason. There's no scenario in which an email is required. And 1 assignment per day, and it's on you. I mean, there's no reason for this to ever happen. Just do the work. We literally do everything to get an A in class. Literally everything. There are literally videos of everything you need to do available very nearly after class is done. So there's no more excuses. So there's that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our lesson 8 app. Let's go, let me do this way, and we'll go over here and get rid of that. And did I change anything here? Just want to be consistent. I think, yeah. All right, so lesson 8, our goal for today is to recreate this app that they have here. It makes a lovely noise. We're going to ignore the noise. I don't think this noise adds very much to the user experience as other play sounds we've used in the past. But what we have here is on run. We get a new, oh, I didn't start, you're right, I didn't start it up there. Good call. A new screen with a background and excuse me, and a series of icons that each get a random color, a random location, a random size, but they're all the same. And a list of different shapes. And like I said, we're going to ignore the noise for now. So let's see what we get from scratch. From restart, let's go ahead and take a look at the start over situation. And all right, so what do we get to start? Not much. We get all of the design elements we need and some buttons, some icons, well, which are really image elements, just they're called icons. And we get a list, an array with 8 items in it. Each of them is a string, but that string is actually how it's formatted, the same way that the image property would look on in design mode. So we are definitely going to be using the set property of whatever element, setting its image property, setting image to something from this list, like icons list index 3 would be the 4th element, and let's set it to this. And so there you go. That's how we're going to get it. Now, we obviously are going to need some sort of random situation, and we also are going to need to address each element, which conveniently enough, the 20 images here have been named icon 0 through icon 19. And we are going to use that same super clever trick of using a loop with the counting variable, the I, as part of a concatenation with the word icon to address all 20 of the elements, icon 0 through icon 19, and putting that in the set property parameter in the ID parameter of the set property, so we can do the same thing to all of them. We do need to keep track or think about, plan ahead, which of the things need to be completely random and which are, I mean, there's obviously a random nature to the color, the size, and the location, but they are all the same element, the same icon. Even though that icon is chosen at random, all 20 get the same icon. So depending on where you put the random number call will affect whether it's a random one for each one or just a random one that they all get the same. And hopefully that makes sense shortly. First thing I'm going to do is get some white space. A lot of you are doing like just enter, 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 and it doesn't really upset me. I mean, it kind of does, just all those yellow triangles. All you need to do is switch it to text mode. And then, and this is just to make it look pretty, doesn't really do anything. Switch it to text mode and a few new lines, and then / for a comment. And then you get all these white space blocks to play with. Would be nice if they just put them in there so you could drag out a block, but that's all right. All right, so we have 3 buttons. We definitely are going to have 3 different events. Let's just go ahead and start building them. We have one event for the button called colors, one for location, one for shape. Let's go ahead and put those in there. And locations, no, first one is colors, and in no particular order except for the order that we see them. And the last one is shapes. Now, for most of, we have a situation where we want on run, we wanted to do it as if the user clicked all 3 of the buttons. Okay, so from what we get before we hit run to what we want to happen the first time when the program starts, it's like they hit colors, random, and shape. So we need something outside of these to occur right away. And we could do it in a way like have a update screen function that handles all the screen updating and then call that. The thing is, though, the changes I want to make for the colors button are different than the changes I want to make for the locations button and the shapes button. We could put those all in update screen and then also just call update screen each time. The problem is that that's not going to solve the problem that the screen elements I want to update when I click on colors button aren't the same. So the way I'm going to solve this is I'm going to have a different function for each of the 3 different buttons. Okay, so one function called, let's just call the function rand color, or yeah, rand color. We'll call that the color function, rand location, and rand shape. And then anytime the user clicks on color button, we'll call rand color, and so on. And the reason why I have these sort of bifurcated, trifurcated, split up is that way when the program starts, the way we are making sure that all these happen is we're just going to call all 3 of these when the program starts to handle, the opening formation is as if they clicked on all 3 of them. So we're going to call rand color when the program starts. We're going to call rand location when it starts, and we're going to call rand shape when it starts. And so those 3 function definitions are going to get handled right away. And then each of the individual changes we want to make will wait for the event of the user clicking on whichever one. This is our main format. I'd say we're about 95% done at this point. Just kidding. All right. This actually isn't that hard. We're going to be done with plenty of time for you to complete it or ask questions or whatever. So we obviously, well, at this point, all we really need to do is define the functions. We know when we want it to be called right away, and we want it to be called on the buttons. We just need to say what we want to do. So let's look at our options or our requirements. Color is changing the color of each icon to a different color. It is also changing the background to a different color. One thing to notice about the colors is that they are translucent. You can see parts of the shapes that are behind them. And so clearly we are going to be using an RGB alpha to have that 4th parameter to adjust the opacity. And we need a different color for the background. Okay. For location is also changing the size. I don't think the sound is necessary. The location changes the size and location. You'll notice that based on the program based on the code for the example, that the parts of the icons are going off the screen. Yeah, that's not good enough for us. We're going to fix that. And the other one is chooses one random shape for all of them. There is, well, we'll get to that in a second. So of those three things that we need to solve for, we're going to solve shapes first. And that's only so that if we solved these two first, you wouldn't be able to check it because there wouldn't be anything to change until we give each of those 20 icons an image property. So we're going to solve random shape first, just for the sake of debugging the other ones. All right, so we know that we want to give one of these 8 strings to the icon property of all 20. We also want it to be random. So that determines where we want to put it. So let's go ahead and get a loop for random shape. We know we want it to happen 20 times because we're going to do it to all of them. And we need to choose a random string here. And so the way we're going to do that is with a local variable because it's only going to be doing here. And we want to pick not just a random item, we want to pick a number that corresponds to a valid index. So our random range is going to be between 0 and 7 because there are 8 of them. The last valid address is 7. But just for best practices, it's going to be between 0 and list.length -1 because that would allow you to add items to the list theoretically. So we need a rand index. You could call it index, you could call it anything. You couldn't call it I because I is being used here. But we need to pick out a random number that corresponds to a valid index. And our range of valid indexes for any list is 0 to the name of the list dot length -1. So icons list dot length -1. This will give us a random number that corresponds to one of the items or the index of one of the items, the address of one of the houses that we want. Now that we have one random number, we need to apply that item to each of the icons. So we're going to do a set property, and this is where we do our clever set the property to all 20. All the elements are icon followed by a number 0 through 19. So we're going to set the property of the element called icon inside of quotes and then outside of quotes plus I. Because the first time through I is 0, so it's setting the property of icon 0. Then the second time through I is 1, it's setting the property of icon 1. The most common mistake for this entire app, this entire lesson, is putting a 1 there. If you put icon +1, it's only going to set the property of icon 1. Icon I lets you set the property of all 20 elements with a single line of code. Does that help? Okay. You can just ask and I'll help you. Okay, so we're choosing all or addressing all 20 icons. We want to, for each of them, set the image property of from the list, the name of the list. We want to set it to the name of the list at index rand index. Okay, rand index needs to be in square brackets. So it's the name of the list, and then the index from that list corresponds to whichever random number one of these they gave us. Hello. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And once we have that combination, it's referring to this string, which is being put into the image property of each of the 20 icons. So at this point, in theory, we should be able to run it and get a random shape. And we click on shapes, and it chooses one of the 8 at random. Now, if we were taking this to the next level, we would be aware that there are only 8. That's fine. No worries. Yeah, Anthony.
That is Anthony.
Yeah. So there are only 8 options. When you click random, there is a 1 in 8 chance that you get the same index randomly, in which case it would seem like the shapes button didn't work. The way you'd get around this is actually kind of complex with keeping track of the previous index and comparing if old index equals new index. Pick a different one. But that's like doubling the complexity of this entire project, and it's not necessary to throw all that at you at once. But if you were interested in problem solving, that's one way to do it. And so there we go. We are picking one of the 8 icons and setting it to the image property of all 20 of the icons. At this point, if you did have one there, it would just set the property of the first element, and the other 20 would still be invisible, because an image without an image property is invisible. It's still there. You just doesn't show anything because we haven't set it to anything. So if you're doing this as we do it, you need to be, run it, test it. If you're is anybody not getting icons? What do you got? Did you do icon plus 1, icon in quotes, and icon plus I? Yeah. Sweet. All right, so we're getting a random shape. We have 2 other things to deal with, their color and the location. I'm gonna do color first. At this point, it doesn't really matter, but between the 2, because we have, when we work on one, we'll have at least something to look at. Let's do color. Like I said before, we are gonna need a random color for background, and we need a random color for each one. Let's start with just random background color. And so we want, it's another set property that's just going to go at the beginning. And the element we want to set the property of is the element is the screen, which is called home screen. We want to set its background color to a random color. So how do we get random color? Well, we get random color with RGB, and we want RGBA so that we get a have the ability to do transparent. Okay, that 4th parameter is the alpha. The way we're going to handle this is with just setting it to 50%. Remember, the first 3 parameters are the redness, the greenness, and the blueness between 0 and 255. The 4th parameter is between 0 and 1, 0 being invisible and 1 being opaque. We could set it up to be random, to choose a random opacity, but so the tricky thing about choosing a random opacity is the random number function in AppLab. If you do random number 0, 1, you're going to get a 0 or a 1. Which, if you put that in here, would mean you'd get invisible or opaque. The way to get, because the alpha, the last parameter of RGB, is expecting a decimal between 0 and 1, you could do random number 0 to 10 and then divide that result by 10. That would give you a decimal. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to stick it at 50% opacity. But we do need a random range for the red, a random range for the green, and a random range for the blue. And we're just going to use our random number situation. So here's a little trick to save you some trouble because of the way AppLab is really stingy with the pixels. If you throw the random number into the 3rd one first, you can avoid having to scroll over. But either way, we want 0 to 255 for all of these parameters, and I'll zoom out and show text or whatever. This is an opportunity, or this is an example where going into text mode probably makes it worse because of all the parentheses needed to make this happen. And let's zoom out a little bit. Wow, why can't I have more pixels? And one thing went away. So we're set the property of, I mean, to simplify it, to make it like cleaner on the screen, you could make a temp variable and then throw it into there. Well, we'll just leave it at this. I will zoom out a bit so that you can, if you need to, pause it and look closer. But this should give us a random background color every time we click color. And so there's that. All right, so we have our background color. The next thing we want to worry about is each of the colors of the icons. And since we're doing something to each of them, we need our loop. We're gonna do a for loop, and we're gonna loop that 20 times, starting at 0, ending at 19, because this is saying end. This is doing it so long as I is less than 20, which means do it to 0 through 19. And because we want a new color, a new fully random color to each one, our randomness is going to take place inside of the loop. So each time through the loop, we get a new color, as opposed to random shape where the randomness happened before the loop. So they all got the same result of the same random instead of a new random for each one. But we can essentially do the same thing here where we have a set property of icon inside of quotes followed by plus I. And the property we want to set is icon color. Icon color. And we want to set it to our full random RGBA, which we'll leave A at 0.5. And our random of each of the other ones is 255. I'm surprised there isn't a built-in random color function. Anytime you are doing some coding that's tedious and repetitive, which are redundant more or less, not necessarily completely redundant. The coding's redundant. There's probably a better way, or rather there should be a better way, like write another function, which I'll do that at the end. Let's do get random color. I'll save this for the end and it won't be required, but everything up until that we will do required. All right, so 20 times for each of icon 0 through icon 19, we are given it a fully random color with a built-in opacity of 0.5, which means this should work. And each time we change the color, it is doing that to the background and to each one. Lovely. Okay, so the only other aspect is the location, but that's also the size and location. And we have a new late work policy that you can look at on the spreadsheet up there. Okay, so here's the thing. We talked about this briefly. They have a fairly large random size range, but their random location allows for that random size to go off of the screen. We are not that sloppy. So here's the thing. Think about, we want a random size. Guys, settle down. Looks like you guys are done. Awesome. But even the whispering, even though I can't hear what you're saying, it's distracting me. And I know that's a me thing. You guys are doing great. Just a personal favor. Keep it down. So we want all of our randomness to happen to each of the 20 elements. So everything in here is going to go inside of our loop of 0 to 20. Well, 0 to 19, stop when you get to 20. So any element on the screen, we've talked about this, has 4 different parameters that refer to size and location. Width, height, X, and Y. X and Y refer to its top left corner, and width is how wide and height is how tall. And you will always see them written together in essentially the same order of X and Y, width and height. Width always comes before height, and that's because width corresponds to X, height corresponds to Y. So we are going to be doing, we're going to do something first, but we're going to do set property, set all 4 of those properties. We're going to set the element's X position, its Y position, its width, and its height. And we're going to do that to each of the 20 elements are going to have all 4 of those elements, all 4 of those properties set. So we can just do icon plus I for each of these. Icon inside of quotes, followed by plus I. And icon plus I, and it won't work if you have an extra space inside of the quotes there, because then it is combining it in a way like trying to express how clever this is on a graph of clever on one axis and useful outside of here on the other axis. It is all the way clever and almost all the way useless outside of this very specific application, just the way AppLab works. But here we go. This sort of clever problem solving, this type of problem solving is everywhere about making things easier. Okay, so we need to come up with our random range. The problem, though, we have the problem of we want it to use the full range. We want, if it comes up with a tiny range, to go all the way to the edge, which is its X position minus whatever width came up. And if it's a big one, we don't want to get it closer than that. So normally we would be setting our X range of a random number between 0 and the width is 320, but we want to go less than that so it doesn't go over. The problem is we need to know how wide the image is before we set our random range. So in order to do that, we need to get a variable, and we'll call it, I don't want to call it width. It probably would work with as a variable name, but I always want to avoid using words that are used elsewhere. So we'll just call it image width, or width 2, WID, image width. So first, okay, so and image height. But hold on a second, give me a second. Just listen for this point. So we need to come up with a valid range. So we want our smallest one to be, let's say 40 by 40. Okay, this is 40 by 40. Come on now. And our biggest one to be maybe 200 by 200. So you would think, and you can tell by my tone, don't go yet. You would think our random image width would be between 40 and 200 for the width, and 40 and 200 for the height. The problem is, though, let's say we get a width of 190, and a height of 50. That's the shape of the icon. And actually, since we don't have it as fill, we have it contained, it would just be this big. It would never be that full size. The only way this is going to work is if we use the same number for width and height, which is another way of saying a square. So we only need one of these things because we're going to use image width as a width and image width. Let's call it image size. Okay, we're going to use the same number for its width and its height to set the property. So we're setting both to image size. And this isn't going to work exactly, but it'll give us something. Oh no, icon height. Oh, I actually said, I was like, I wonder if they're going to type in IMAJE when I say image. And then I did. Okay, so we are getting, well, the problem is we're setting everything to these things, but we are getting different sizes for each one. We just need to figure out what is our valid range of X and Y locations. So if our random size comes up as the smallest possible, which is 40 by 40, we want to make sure that X goes between 0, which is all the way on the left, and no closer than 40 all the way to the right. All the way to the right is 320. So it would be 320 minus 40. But depending on the size of that random 40 to 200, we want it to be a different distance. So it's always going to be total width minus whatever random number came up for size. So our range of random number is, and I got to hit refresh because it keeps taking away. The farthest to the left is going to be 0. And the farthest to the right is going to be image size, 320 minus image size. So we want our X position to be, remember, it's the top left corner. Top left corner at 0 means all the way to the side. And the right end of our random is going to be our total screen width, which is 320, hard-coded 320, minus whatever random comes through as image size. And that's why we have to decide on the size of the image before we say its location, because its size determines its valid range. And this should work. Why is it not getting closer? I guess that's doing all right. It's not getting that close. What if, I think that has to do with the way that images, like, hold on, let's say this is just has to do with the way that AppLab does deals with icons. So it's essentially like we're taking that one of the items from that list and putting it into this. So this icon, the top left corner of this is right here. So if we set it to 0, it's never going to get that close, which is fine. If you wanted to use the entire screen, you would set its range to be from negative something to 320 minus image size plus a little bit more, but that's unnecessary. And let me go back and clear this out. Actually, I don't even need to because the function replaces it. So we have our image size, we're setting a random range and for X, and our random range for Y going to be 0 at the top, and our total height still is 450. So it's going to be 450 minus image size, but I don't really want the icons to go behind the button. So I'm going to limit our total height to a maximum of like 415 minus image size. So our range for height is 0 to 415 minus IMG size. And let's see, that should work. And I think that's working. All right, so that's where we call it for mandatory stuff. I do actually want to solve the problem, and I haven't solved it yet. We'll be solving it together. Getting like a return function for getting a random color, so we don't have to deal with this long program situation, and also returning a random color would be useful in the future. And the other one is like to solve for checking if it's a repeated icon in the, do we have get property? We do have get property, good. And that's actually not going to go in here. We're going to do it in random shape. But again, this is only if you are check for repeat. And I'm just putting a comment in here as a like an annotation for me to come back to it. Let's solve the get random color. So get random color, my goal is to have it so instead of typing in that full long stretch, it won't even let me put it here. Can I get rid of it? Let's instead of putting in that long stretch of code, just type in a function call. I just need a place to put it at this point. And in fact, let's just move this up. Have a function call that will just return that. And I should reset this. Okay, so get random color, var, I already used rand color. New color is going to be like that. And let's return. Can we even do return? Return new color. And is it gonna let me do that? I don't even know. Get ring colors are fine, but it's not called. Then instead of typing in the whole thing, we can just call get rand color, open close parentheses. And let's see if this works. There we go, it works. So this is how you use a return function, which we haven't done before. But the idea is a function that when this function runs, it gives you something. Okay, you can use it to check for something, in which case you would use that in a conditional, like if, and then a return function equals true, or you can just say if, do a thing, instead of having to, it's a way of just like reorganizing things to be neater. Get rand color. And I tend to call them get something because, to describe these rand color, rand location, rand shape. I probably should just call them like change color, change whatever. But here you can see this is a little bit easier. And just like any function, once you have it written once, that's it. You just call it and it does all of this stuff. And if we wanted to use color stuff a bunch of other places, we could use that return function. And I don't know, I'm not making that required, but it's not a bad idea. Okay, so we need a way to check to see if the new random shape is what we used to have. In order to do that, we need to use get property. Instead of using a variable to keep track of the previous index and making sure our new random index is different, which actually we could do. No, let's use get property. Okay, we're gonna have a new new variable called old icon, and it's going to get property of, it doesn't matter, icon 0, going to get its image property. And what that's going to do is put whichever string they all have, because 0 will have the same as the rest of them, into a variable. We then need to check if this is equal to the result, icons list at index rand index, our new random number. If they are the same, we need to do a new random number. And let's do a loop. Let's just check. How about while? Okay, now so far we've used while in a way where we had the way that the loop would terminate is by having some sort of counting variable and saying do it while the counting variable is less than whatever. We are going to do it while old icon does not equal icons list index rand index. Okay, icons list rand index, icons list at index rand index is going to be a string that is going to would be based on this random number, and old icon is whatever the previous one was. And if they are the same, we want to pick a new random index, which we need to get rid of the var because we've already used a var here. And so if they are the same, while they don't equal, hold on. No, while they do equal. If they are the same, pick a new index. If they're different, ignore it. Okay, if the existing image property of icon 0, which is the same for all of them, is whatever icon is at the random index that we made a random number is, a random number, get a new random index. And we're still checking icons list at index rand index. And if they're not the same, meaning a new one, continue on with that new rand index. Now, this is a difficult one to test, but we should be able to click shapes and get a new one every time, where before there was a 1 in 8 chance of us not doing it. Okay, this is, I would say, a medium advanced step, and I can prove it works by commenting out our loop, and there's a 1 in 8 chance. There we go. The first time I clicked it and nothing changed. Change, 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 change. Didn't change. Okay. So this loop is checking to make sure that of our random, it's not the same random. And there we go. All right. I think that's it. Ship it. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any questions about the new late work policy, speak up. And other than that, you have plenty of time to, I would say, even start from scratch, but you shouldn't need to. And just a reminder, if you got less than a 5 on any of the currently graded assignments, which is just 1 through 4, you can still email me to get a reassessment before the deadline. It would be sort of the previous grading policy. For all other assignments, including the one we did today, it is the new grading policy, and we'll be continuing on that. Okay, so just a reminder, the due date for what we did today is today. You need to get it done before Sunday night. And as long as you do that, you don't need to email me, and you're not going to lose any points. If you choose to go past that, the steps needed to recover those points are far harder than just doing them on time. Okay, we'll see. We'll see how. Okay. All right. That's it. Good luck.